Thank you so much. We were actually having a really interesting discussion about this entire topic outside. So we're going to be continuing that, and I'm so glad to bring everyone else into this conversation. So please do save your questions for the end. We will be taking that. So skilling, of course, has always been a important thing, but like the word skilling, training has become a buzzword over the last few years, especially over the pandemic, when people started to realize that, there was this kind of gap between, studying and academics, and then when you go into jobs, and even when you're in jobs, there has to be a continuous skilling that needs to keep going on. It doesn't just end at schooling or in universities. And what's been really amazing is the kind of response we've gotten from the industry and how much they've entered the conversation and said that, no, yes, let's talk about this, let's see what we can do, let's make sure that academics and industries and teachers and tutors and everyone can come together and work together and really get this ball rolling, because India has so much talent to offer, and it would be a waste to just sort of not be able to tap into that. So without further ado, I would like to start this conversation. Let me start with Samir. Can we start with you? Can you tell me, like, when this topic what came to you, what were your initial thoughts?
Sure, thanks. So I think the initial thoughts were that while we folks in the industry look at how the landscape is changing, what that means is we need to also have folks in our company who understand the changing ecosystem, the ever-changing ecosystem. Finance is not what it was 28 years ago when I did my CA. I think I had to learn, unlearn, relearn, God knows how many times, and I still do that on a daily basis. New concepts come in, and I think the other major change which has happened during my own career is finance and IT have become two sides of the same coin. What I learned during my profession earlier was how to do accounting. Now that's no more required. The ERP takes care of it, the systems, whether it's boundary applications or other systems, take care of it. What we need is ability to forecast, ability to catch the trend. A trend is your friend. And most importantly, learn to be nimble. In today's world, or earlier there were two types of companies. They were big or small. Now there are only two types of companies, fast or slow. You can be a big company, yet be fast and survive. You can be a small company, yet be slow and not survive. What that means is you need to take informed risks. You need to make sure that you put all your analysis on the table. You need to make sure that you're reading what the competition is doing. You need to make sure that you're looking at what's happening in the global economic landscape. The best example I can give you is, again, earlier the mantra was just-in-time inventories. Come COVID, and even now, it's just in case. Any company which had inventories was able to sell. Any company which did not have inventories could not sell. So something which changed so fast, and now it's continuing. From an era of globalization to an era of hyper-nationalism, the whole world is changing and so fast. We need to be nimble. And generally, finance folks are not known to be very, very nimble. And as skilling evolves, it has to keep pace with the ever-changing business environment. The good thing is we finance folks have a bird's eye view of the entire operations of the company. But what sometimes we miss is to appreciate the interlinkages, the upstream and the downstream, as well as take our wealth of knowledge to others in the company. Those watertight compartment of various functions, those days are gone. My job is to make sure even a sales guy, a HR guy, an admin guy, a manufacturing guy understands what finance is. And similarly, I need to understand what manufacturing is, what HR is. So use the advantage we have as a bird's eye view of the company, the interlinkages, add value, become a trusted advisor. And lastly, and most importantly, keep a close watch on your competition. It's going to kill you. One of the most defining things which I go back and watch that video is the video of Nokia's CFO when they were closing down the company and selling it to Microsoft. He was crying. And we all grew up with Nokia 3310s and what have you, and how that changed. And again, BlackBerry. And in today's world, even when Apple came out with their products, XYZ copied it. So the world is changing so fast. I think we in finance need to look at what the economic landscape, the competition is doing. And for that, we need to be skilled. We need to be more of data scientists. Numbers are given, compliance is given. Digitization really helps in compliance. Look at the numbers, see what story it is telling. upgrade your storytelling skills, convert a story into a number and number into a story. That's what skilling is for finance going forward.
Thank you so much, and I think you actually laid that out really well. As CFOs, you're in a unique position to kind of see everything that's going on in the industry. You're able to see where the gaps are, where the talent is, and being able to tap into that and kind of bring it all together puts you in a very, very unique position. Paras, can you please tell us, about your initial thoughts about the topic, and tell me more about, as a CFO and skilling, where are you seeing the broader challenges?
Thank you, Vasudha. So when I was going through this particular topic, then I just browsed the Google and then wanted to understand some of the latest trends. So there was a recent survey by a global HR and payroll company, ADP, which says that India ranks among the top in case of workplace resilience at 32% as compared to global average of 15%. And I think all CFOs sitting here and all dignitaries sitting here should be proud of this particular achievement. Because we are significant contributors to workplace resilience, and who better than us knows what workplace resilience is all about. But then there is still miles to go because 68% is still unachieved, and we need to work towards achieving 100% workplace resilience. At Tynor, we have worked on certain initiatives and projects which help us to be more resilient in terms of the changing world. The first is productivity. So normally when we talk about productivity, it is all about blue-collared or the workers' productivity. But at Tynor, we have started working on white-collared productivity. It is as basic as improving the Excel skills of all the individuals or improving the word typing speed from maybe 10, 20 to 40 words per minute to as advanced as RPAs or bots in the organization. And everything is measurable in terms of numbers, and who better than us can convert everything or the ROI to numbers. And that's what we have started over the last 1 year, and believe me, it is reaping a lot many results, and it will also prepare the individuals to be more resilient in relation to the changing world. The second would be in relation to the impact leadership. At Tynor, over the last 1 year, we have started a new concept called high impact leadership, which is not only about creating impact projects, but also giving certain privileges and benefits to those leaders who work on impact projects. As individuals, as finance team, or as other departments, we constantly focus on daily mundane and operational activities, and high impact projects go for a backseat, or it becomes only 2 or 3 projects during the year. Imagine if every individual is doing a high impact project, what will be the output and the productivity of the organization? So we have worked on high impact projects, and 1 or 2 projects become the KRA of each and every individual. And it's not only about delivering the projects, but as a result of which the individual also gets growth in their stature. They also get privileges like ESOPs, vehicle, and other benefits if they do transformational projects, which is adding value to the top line and bottom line of the company. Third thing, what we have done is to be very transparent in our company in terms of sharing the numbers, salary. So at Tynor, nothing is confidential to our employees, to our outside clients. Our salaries are known to each and every one. Our turnover profitability is known to all the employees, all our clients, which builds a sense of reputation and trust that the management or the leaders are not hiding anything from their employees. And it's always 2 ways. When you give back to the employee, they will also share their issues, their personal or professional ailments with you, and that becomes kind of a family in the organization. Fourth is about the long-term and the short-term goals. Normally, the finance fraternity talks about long-term goals as a 5-year goal or a short-term goal as a 1-year goal. But at Tynor, we have broken down the short-term goal also into quarterly goals. Even the KRAs are also measured on a half-yearly basis because we know what is in store in the next quarter or in the next 6 months, and we don't know what will happen in the next year in March. So because of the changing world, it's important to be a short-term view of 3 months and 6 months, keeping your long-term horizon also in view because your 5-year goals are also important, but at the same time, the short-term goals are also very important. The fifth element which we have also focused is also about respect and open door policy. So at Tynor, we respect each and every individual. It starts from the basic, like in email, we don't like hi Paras, we write dear Mr. Paras, so that everyone is respected, be it a junior employee or be it a senior employee in the organization. and that's how we respect each and every individual in the organization. So these are some of the elements that we have done. And in case of high impact projects, we have created a group of 30 leaders, and it's not only leader, but also from middle and junior level management who is working for our 5-year goal of being $1 billion company and also be among the top 10 in the world. Currently, we are the top company in India in terms of orthopedic equipments and medical devices, but we want to be among the top 10 in the world, and that's what our aspirations are in the long term. But the short-term goals are also vigilant from a CFO perspective, and I'm also having multiple hats because of the current issues that has been happening globally. So I'm also taking care of the purchase and supply chain. And that's how the finance needs to spread their wings, not only within finance, but also to outside departments, wherein you are able to contribute through the numbers and through the logics and through your strategies that you have to grow your organization.
Thank you for sharing that, Paras. And I think you made a good point there where essentially, even though every company is going to be a tech company, when you're working with people, you definitely have to be very, very hands-on and very, very aware of the changes that are coming and how you can better kind of keep adapting. So what's working 5 years ago, what's working now, and what's going to keep working in the future, that's going to keep changing. And being hands-on and being transparent is the only way to kind of go about that. Thank you. I'd like to come to Arnab now. Same question to you, like what were your initial thoughts about this topic? And also, since we're talking about changes in the financial sector, can you tell me about how the composition of your financial team is changing?
Sure. Thanks, Vasudha. I think last 3 or 4 years, or particularly the last 2.5 years, probably all of us will agree in the room has brought the largest transformation in our working lives. Like as Samit touched upon, and I totally agree with him, he touched upon a wide range of topics. So if you see the finance function 25 years back in the 90s versus the finance function in 2000 versus in 2010 versus now, I think there has been a very, very significant change. Last couple of years has accelerated the change. If I have to give it in a very simple example, so pre-COVID, if there was a treadmill, it was going at a speed of 6. That speed of 6 has now become a speed of 10. So you can't just keep walking on the treadmill, you have to run along with it. Couple of things which is very essential in this is, while there is a need to learn, there is also a very strong need, and again Samir I think touched upon, to unlearn. So the importance of unlearning has become very, very important in our today's world. Depending on how many years you're working and you're working on a similar kind of a thing, I think that aspect is the biggest aspect which, in my opinion, is contributing towards skilling. Now, how the finance skill set is changing, as you know, the automation has really accelerated. And again, there are certain things which are across industry. There are certain aspects which are industry specific. So if you see, like a company like us, we are a manufacturing organization, but we are into tech-enabled products. So everything which we sell is a connected product. It communicates 2 ways. The products talk to each other because it's controlled through an edge. And then on top of it, there is an app and analytics layer on the product through which you can take data and do predictive behavior on the product. So that's the ecosystem of product which we sell. And when you are selling a product like this, you need people who can understand the language of machines. So that brings to the question which Vasudha was asking. Since you need people who understand the language of the machines, about 15 to 20% of my team is actually engineers. They are not accountants, so they are engineers who can understand the language of the machine. Then you need people who can work with large volume of data. So with that logic, we have data scientists now, people who are working. So, and we work on a hub and spoke model. Why we have a central AI hub in India, which is about 150 to 200 people at this stage who are only focusing on AI. But then there is, in finance, we have about 5 or 10 data scientists who are working to mine data, work on the data lake, and based on that, the entire organization is now taking and using the data. So I think the importance of data, see, one thing which in today's world is abundant is availability of tools. The key thing is how do you align your process, how do you upskill your people, and then blend the tools and the process together so that you can go in your transformation journey.
No, thank you so much. I was just thinking about what you were saying about having engineers on your team, and it's very interesting that, the kind of stream that you follow down and your skills and the job you end up with can all be completely different titles, and essentially, everyone is everything. We're all wearing multiple hats. Karun, thank you so much for waiting. Last but not least, same question to you. How do we go about building a crisis-resilient workforce, and what are the broader challenges that we are facing today?
Yeah, no, thanks, Vasudha. So I think when I heard about this topic, the word skilling to me is a synonym to relevance, right? So what we have seen externally, that things are changing so fast, right, across, whether you look at the business models, the geographies, the boundaries, disruption, supply chain, inflation, there are a lot of things which are happening all around us. So within that, how do you build an organization which is resilient and ready for future is a key challenge and top of mind for every organization. So one thing which can really help us navigate through these tough times as we go forward is, of course, building a resilient workforce, which I think is the core of what we do. Now, it is easier said than done, right? The word resilience is something which is very core to the character of every human being. It is not something that is a skill which can be easily done. So you being resilient means you really need to have a tough character, you need to have a growth mindset, you really need to find ways to get out of the uncertainties that you will come across. So broadly, I think what we need to do is to prepare our workforce for the future is to look at the new age skills which will be relevant tomorrow. So there is a saying that what got us here may not got us tomorrow. So there are relevant skill sets which has brought us here, but the world tomorrow is going to be very different. The world tomorrow is going to be digital led. The world tomorrow is full of automation. The world tomorrow is full of uncertainties. You will be keep thrown different challenges at you, and you need to figure out how to do what that as you go forward. So I think there is a lot that we need to be prepared about the future. Now coming on to the specific question is down to some of the challenges in that aspect. I think the number one challenge that we are facing today and we were discussing is our own mindset, right? All of us believe that we are here at a certain position, at a certain level just because we have some skills, which may be true. But again, as I said, it has got you here, may not got us to the tomorrow. So a general sense of appreciation that all of us needs to continue to skill ourselves, continue to learn, continue to see what is more relevant, make ourselves marketable as we go forward is the number one thing or the number one challenge that we are facing. So as an organization, how do you create a culture where you encourage learning, where you encourage risk taking, where you encourage growth mindset is super important. So the number one challenge I think today that we have to work through as an ecosystem is of course the mindset that we have from the employees perspective. Second, I think again building on to my first point is lack of time. Everybody you will go to is busy in their own life, in their own professional life, right? If you tell somebody that you need to do this element of skilling, you need to do this certification, everybody will come back to you saying that I don't have time. So I think then the responsibility is to the leadership team to make sure they create a culture where they give adequate time to each and every one of employees to spend on their own development, which is super important. And I think that again, I comes back to the word culture, that how do you create those positions for the individuals to really spend some time on their learning, which will be more relevant as we go forward. And the third and the last thing I think is that we all have to be intentional about it. While all of us will sign on some learning skilling programs, but they will die their natural death after a certain point of time. You are just not able to carry that forward for a long period of time. So I think the role of the first line managers is what I call the managers who hire people into their organizations, because they become the first point of contact to anybody who comes in. And it has become even tougher with this hybrid workplace, right? We have thousands of employees who have joined organizations in the last 2 years, and they have never seen the office of the organization that they have been hired at. But what they know and what they have interacted with is the manager who hired them. So I think how do you train managers to be coaches? How do you train managers to be mentors so that they can put the company's culture, they could help you connect to the values and the culture of organization, and then they could take care of their employees to provide that cohesive environment for them to grow, is a very important enablement aspect that we really need to focus on. So I think more about the mindset, how do you create that ecosystem for employees to learn, and how do you enable first line managers are some of the challenges that we need to work through if we really need to build a resilient workforce.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for mentioning the fact that you also need to give employees time to skill. I mean, we talk about work-life balance, but maybe we need to add like work-life and skilling balance to the equation. Thank you for your input. Samir, I'll come back to you. You've had a chance to hear what all of your co-panelists have said. So I want to ask you, do you have any comments on what they have said? And also, we're talking about how much skilling has changed. So can you tell us about, how have you had to kind of update your own skilling in the process?
So first of all, I think wonderful points made by my co-panelists. I'll start by saying we have to lead by example. We can't expect our employees to learn new technology and not learn it ourselves. In fact, now, the higher you go up the ladder, the more you are looked at both with a telescope and a microscope. So I need to learn HANA, I need to learn Hyperion, I need to learn all the reporting tools, sometimes be able to do the analysis myself and also question my team. So upskilling yourself is as important as expecting the team to upskill themselves. That's sometimes difficult. It's easier said than done. And I can tell you that our employees are watching us. And if they don't feel encouraged by the leadership, if they don't see us learning on our own, they will go to somebody else. It's a talent shortage market, right? And why are they with your company? Not necessarily only for money. It's a big myth that people change jobs only for money. Well, money is an important thing, but if you have a boss who's not adding value, if he's not able to have a meaningful conversation with you, which means sometimes he learns for you, but sometimes that person also needs to learn from the leadership. So that's one. Second thing, I think we talked about how we hire. You said, to me, skills can be taught, will can't. So it's skill versus will. In my view, will is more important. I can teach you the skill, not an issue. Not an issue. And while I'm making a generic statement, I believe, fresh employees from tier 1 till about tier 3, or at least till tier 2 cities, do not want to work too hard, which means they have a will issue. Whereas a tier 3 to a tier 5, 6 employee knows that he or she may have a handicap, works harder, is able to come up the learning curve far quicker. Again, it's a generalization. I'm not saying that every tier 1, tier 2 fresh employees like that. So concentrate more or at least enough on will. Don't just concentrate on skill. This is a big learning for me. When I grew up, campus placement at the Institute of Chartered Accountants or did my US CPA, everybody was just talking skill, skill, skill. So skill is very important, but will is as important, if not more. To me, probably even more. I would do a psychometric test at least if I'm hiring a people manager, because that person is the ambassador of my company, of my organization. How we've handled it in Agilent is like, you talked about making sure we are transparent. Now, we don't disclose the salaries. That's a GDPR issue if we start disclosing salaries of individual employees. But what we do is we have something called a reference point. So at every level, a reference point is known to everybody. Then we also have published what is the minimum compa ratio, which is comparison to that reference point, both on the minimum side as well as on the maximum side. So that level of transparency we have provided to make sure that the employees know where their career path can go, where they stand amongst their colleagues. We necessarily formally do a quarterly appraisal where we talk about it. Then obviously, if you are a high talent, we could put you on additional coaching assignments, seminars. But the real incentive is RSUs. RSUs are the restricted stock units which you give. And for folks who add value, transformation projects, we put them to that. And there is no one size which fits all. The latest buzzword is RPA or a bot. Now, a lot of it is just marketing by these big 4 companies. I don't see any one of them sponsoring this seminar, which is good, because those guys have a lot of budgets. I won't take their names, maybe it's not appropriate. But RPA is not the solution for every problem. I'll give you a simple example. The most used bot is an accounts payable process where the bot scans the invoice and then, through OCR, you pick up the various fields and you upload that into your Oracle, SAP, Tally, what have you. Now, what happens if you have a different format of invoice? What happens tomorrow when the government of India changes everything to electronic invoicing? What happens if the bot fails? Are you adequately staffed enough to kind of make sure that you're paying your suppliers correctly? One example I'll give you is of a country which is kind of similar to ours or was similar to ours, both from a complexity and the maturity level, is Mexico. Not sure how many of you are aware, but about 5 years back, the Mexican government came up with an initiative where every individual invoice issued has to be in an electronic form and will necessarily go to the government. Not only that, but every time anybody makes a payment against any invoice, that portion or that piece of information also comes in an electronic format to the government. Now, what that did was it made life for bankers very easy. They had better control on your working capital than you have. This is the power of digitization. Come digitization, bots will go away. In fact, so much so that, your vendor can automatically send you a file which will get uploaded onto your SAP or Oracle or whatever your platform is. There is no need to even look at, the hard copy of the invoice. So bot is gone, OCR is gone. India is moving to, e-invoicing very soon. So digitization, data, and the demographic dividend which we have in India works for us. I think we need to skill not only our entire workforce population, but also ourselves. And lastly, my favorite thing, I think I touched about that in my previous time when I spoke. Lead by example. Don't expect others to change. Those days where you expect your team to do all the hard work and stuff like that will not take you any far away. The employees have great ideas, but you also have to contribute. Make sure that you use the ability which you have being in finance to know the ecosystem. Reach out to the sales guys. In office, don't spend time with your own finance colleagues. Having coffee with HR, having coffee with IT, having coffee with your order fulfillment folks, manufacturing folks, understand what their problems are. Another example I'll give you real quick, is how I help the sales guy convert their revenue targets in a jiffy. There's a new concept called pay for use. Capital expenditure for the most, or at least in many industries, is a past thing. Now what you want is your machines or whatever you manufacture, can I sell it to customers on a pay per use model? Which means I'm converting my capital cost into per transaction cost, which the vendor will sell. So I introduced this concept in India, and I'm glad to share that our revenue is going up. We are a US listed company. We can borrow money at almost 0% or 1% rate of interest. So I can actually convert my revenue into a monthly or a per transaction or a quarterly payment instead of the big machine which I sell. And again, we are into life sciences, so we manufacture machines to test the composition of any solid, gas, or liquid in the world. So as finance people, I need to understand what is the problem which the sales guy is seeking to resolve, not only to sell, but also to kind of cross-sell and upsell. So use your knowledge to help all your colleagues take your brand further. I would say that the brand custodian is a finance guy. And earlier it was just making sure compliance, but now we can take the brand, a notch above by just selling, helping the sales guys to sell.
Yeah, no, that's a really important point. Actually, I'd like to come to Karun at this point because you're talking about recruitment and hiring. And actually, I would like to ask you, what is it that you're looking for in new recruits, and what kind of skilling and training programs do you have in place to kind of help them upskill?
Yeah, no, thanks, Vasudha. I think the number one thing from a recruitment perspective is that you have to broad base your input funnel, which is I call how do you hire diverse talent. Right, I know Sami spoke about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities. I think the more you open up your thought process to have as many more candidates coming in, both from a diversity perspective and ideas perspective, I think that works really well for the organization. So one thing that we really enable from an organizational recruitment is that we should have as much broad-based input funnel as possible from a candidate perspective so that you don't miss out on the ideas as you hire people. Second, again, I agree. I think will and attitude is very important. So when you look for recruiting people, you really look for recruitment in terms of somebody who has the right attitude or who has the right will, because then that person, the skills, etc., is something that you can teach, and then person can excel in your ecosystem. So I think a lot of hiring interviews that we come across are more focused on the softer aspects in terms of how that person can handle ambiguity, or how that person can actually look at other softer aspects, situational leadership, executive leadership. I think some of these skills have become more important when we hire people rather than the functional. Of course, we know the person comes with the functional knowledge and he or she will be able to do a good job at that. So I think the second point, of course, is to look at the softer skills and the attitude of the person in terms of how do we take that forward. And I think once you have a person on board, retention and training plan is super important. I think hiring and recruitment is not easy, right? All of us are managers in the room and we know how much effort, time and pain it is to go through to get the right candidate in. But the buck starts when you hire the right candidate, right? How do you make sure that you provide right environment to that person to excel and to grow and to retain that talent, which is where your onboarding plans and the skilling plans comes into play. So again, there are traditional skilling plans, which I know most of us try to focus on. How do we continue to build on the functional skills and few other things? But the 2-3 skills that we really invest and look for in a person from a skilling perspective, one, of course, is the technology and the digital skills. I think they have become super pervasive. We have seen the acceleration which has happened in digital transformation. Now every company is a digital company. Every function is a digital function. So if you as a finance organization is not a digital-led finance function, then you're missing the bus. So a big part of the training program is how do we skill everyone from a digital perspective. Again, don't take me wrong. I don't mean digital that you have to start coding because you have a finance background. It is a general appreciation of all the products and the tools and the solutions that you're going to use, and how do you maximize their use to drive higher productivity, to drive automation, to strengthen controls. So I think that the whole skilling part on the technology side is super important, is what we really designed the plan for. Second, again, I would focus on the softer aspects, and I firmly believe that if we need to survive tomorrow, we need to create more and more entrepreneurs in the organization. Now, to me, entrepreneur is a mindset. It is not that you believe somebody is leading their own business, that person is an entrepreneur and we are not. Entrepreneurship is about taking ownership. It is about giving flexibility to the people to fail. It is around encouraging risk-taking in the organization. So I think the second aspect of scaling that we are focusing on is how do we create more entrepreneurs in the organization who are more self-driven, who are more risk takers, and who really have a growth mindset. Because once you create that type of a metal, they will automatically navigate through any uncertainty that will come through at the second point of time. So I think the focus on digital, focus on creating entrepreneurs, and third is being intentional about it. Again, I cannot emphasize the word intentional, which is where the whole ecosystem comes together, from your leadership, from your first line managers, from your employees to your HR partners. How are you more intentional? How are you measuring the progress on a quarterly basis? How are you giving time to employees to really excel in that? So I think you need to create an ecosystem of learning, ecosystem of skilling in your organization for you to really retain employees and make sure they are successful and help you make successful organizations going forward.
Thank you so much. Arnab, I would like to ask you now, because we've sort of talked a lot about the importance of skilling and, of course, the unique position that CFOs are in to kind of see the gaps and sort of see the talent that's needed. But can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly is the role of a CFO in all of this?
I think generally, if you see, the CFO's role is emerging from a CFO to a Chief Value Officer. You will keep hearing this term. And CFO's interface in a lot of cycles of the organization is becoming more and more prominent. Particularly in the aspect of skilling, I think more than the CFO, it's a responsibility of the entire leadership team together. And one of the structural aspects which we are doing in our organization, and I know many peer organizations are doing, is a concept of a learning academy. It's very important that you have a structured learning academy. Depending on your scale, size, you can think of either doing it in-house or partnering with someone else. And within the learning academy, create a finance academy. Because if you see the finance skill set of what is required today, versus what was there 5 years back or 10 years back, and what will be there 5 years forward is very different. Lot of things, as we have discussed all across, now where we used to finish our work, we are starting our work from there. Because trial balance, transactional accounting, all of that is a given now. Now if that is a given, that will get done either by the system or done by a digital finance factory. What do we need? Essentially in our organization, what we have seen is we need two essential things. One is what our friends have already spoke about, is the digital skill set. I think that every organization is realizing. The second aspect is the art of storytelling. Numbers will come out of the system, but you need somebody who can tell the story about the number. So in our Finance Academy, we are really now promoting the art of storytelling. How do you get people to do that? Now, again, within finance, I would strongly recommend you early CFOs or N-1 level to go a little deeper into the domain. See, within finance, as you know, depending on how you would have bucketized, you will essentially have a accounting and controls function, you will have a business partnering function, you will have a tax and customs function, you will have a treasury and credit function. If you are a large organization, you will have an M&A function. If you are a listed company, you will have an investor relationship function. Now, the skill sets in each of these is very different. Now, on the accounting side, on the tax and customs side, we require deep domain expertise. While tech will be on one side, The other side is hardcore domain expertise. Now, how do you bring in more and more domain experts there? Because one thing which we need to keep in mind is that, see, the government is becoming more nimble. They have more access to data. The country in the last 3 years has probably done the biggest ERP in the world, or last 5 years with GST coming in. Now, the regulators are talking to each other. So you need people who are nimble, who can connect the dots in terms of the regulations and design your systems and processes accordingly. To sum up, I would say 3 skill set: storytelling, digital skill set, and core technical domain, depending on the function where you are in, is going to be very relevant, in my opinion, for the future.
Wow, I hope everyone's taking notes from this discussion. There's a lot to you can hone in on it next time you're going for a job interview. Paras, you're our last speaker for the evening, and you've heard what everyone else has had to say. I would like to ask you, what are your thoughts on that? And also, because we've just come out of the pandemic, it's still ongoing, of course, but what do you think we've learned from the pandemic in regards to skilling and also the financial sector?
Sure. So post-pandemic, I think there have been key trends, I think, that we should be cognizant of and we should learn from it. The first and the primary is that constant upskilling and digital dexterity will outweigh tenure and experience. That's important. Second is the smart machines will become your co-workers. Third would be that work life will reveal a darker side, because if it's work from home, then there are a lot more issues and inputs which are required for the employees to be engaged. Fourth is we-working will remove the middle management or the middle managers. The traditional middle managers were like having a manager and then there are employees below those managers. But now the organization and HR look for those managers who are guide or coaches to their team or employees, or who are more empathetic in nature in relation to not only with the team, but also outside organization or within different departments in the organization. And the fifth, the important point is also that the current employees, they will work for purpose and passion and not just for money, because purpose and passion is more important than money. Yeah, money is also important, but then employee feels attached to the organization. It's important that employee and each and every employee needs to believe that they are as important as the organization, and that's how they'll be able to contribute more, give more output, and at the time of issues or crisis, they'll be more resilient and they will bounce back, and they will give more profitability and growth to the organization. In organization, normally the terms that we use are customer focus, customer delight, but I think employee first is the criteria which needs to be focused by all the organizations. The way the Indians or the families think Atithi Devo Bhav will have to, I think, treat employee Devo Bhav. And that's how we'll be able to give more value to the organization and the employees who are there in the organization. Because if employees are satisfied, engaged, customers and suppliers will automatically be taken care of. And that's what is more important for all the organizations in terms of crisis, in terms of any issues that may crop up from an outside world. Employees are the ones who will support you and bounce you back from the crisis that is there. So that's what is important.
Right. No, thank you so much. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience. So if anyone has any questions, please.
So now, while you are looking for a crisis resilient workforce, you don't have a workforce if you have the churning going on across, and you don't have a culture to retain the organization, retain the workforce within that. So you need to ingrain that culture in the employees and in the post-COVID world where everybody is working without coming to the office, as Karun was saying, and as well as for offices which are far across the global world. How do you ingrain that culture inside to probably continue with that team? This is my question. Maybe you guys can probably give your experience, so that will be great.
I think it's a very relevant question. I think one of the biggest element which COVID has taught us is the element of trust. I think in this whole thing, if as a leader, as a finance leader, or as any leader, how do you embed more trust in your organization? And that comes through more engagement. Formal, informal touch points, more engagement. How do you collaborate and do things together, particularly when you are in a remote or a semi-remote mode. And now especially when we are coming back to a hybrid, and I think most of us will agree that the hybrid is here to stay. So how do we kind of have processes, systems, touch points? I mean, more and more, I mean, like for example, when we collaborate, what we do is we use stuff like mentees, I mean, a lot of collaborative feature in teams. So that's how we are trying to engage and build this constant connect. There's no substitute of a physical connect, we all would agree. But at least whatever you can get out of technology, I think you're trying to get the best of both. But frequent touch points, I think, is the key mantra.
I would like to add one more point here. See, we'll also have to show employee the long-term view and the long-term goals that the organization has, and also engage or make employees the owners of the organization. Because it's not only about salary, which I also discussed before, it's also about wealth creation. If employee feel that they'll be able to create wealth and they can also become entrepreneurs in the organization, I think they'll also be, retained in the organization. It's not only about 1 year bonus or salary for 1 month, it's also about how are you influencing employees to create wealth. And that can come through various rewards, privileges, ESOPs, RSUs, as was mentioned earlier. So those kind of also monetary benefits from a long-term perspective will also help you to retain employees on a long-term basis. So trust and also the wealth.
Yeah, and just a point to add, I think one practical example is, again, leadership has to walk the talk. I think Sameer has said that. So in an organization, if as a leadership team you are transparent, you are talking the value system of the organization, some of the decisions that you take are based on those value systems, which really guides you as an organization. I think that has an automatic ripple effect which comes on to the employees. And second thing which has really helped me in that experience is that as part of development plan for employees, it is important that everybody has some sort of a business acumen in terms of what your company does, what are the products and the solutions that you provide. That way you will be able to create that element of connection, that how are we relevant to the market, what is the product that we sell, and the work that I am doing, how it is relevant in the overall scheme of things. And being in finance, how I am able to relate that to the business perspective. So I think a general understanding of the products and the solutions that you sell in the market, how they are relevant to your customers, that will help you get connected to whatever job you are in, to make sure that you get connected to the culture and then hopefully excel in that organization.
Quick 30-second. I think what really helps me manage attrition is there to stay. I have cross-trained teams. One of the things I have to do is to make sure I cross-train. So the treasury guy also has worked with FP&A earlier. FP&A guy has worked in treasury. And I reward them by promotion. So unless you've kind of rotated at least 2 functions, beyond a certain level, you don't get a promotion. The second thing which really helps me manage attrition is very beautiful documentation. I'm ISO 14001 certified. Each and every process we do is documented, including screenshots. Of course, documentation can help you only up to a certain point. The rest is your ability to read numbers and convert the number into a story, or a story into a number from a FP&A perspective. But cross-training and documentation helps you manage attrition. Attrition is there to stay. There will always be somebody who's willing to pay you more than what you are paid currently. That's part of life, let's accept it.
Thank you. I hope that answers your questions. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but our panelists will be available so you can have this discussion later on outside or over lunch later. Thank you, panelists, so much for joining me today for this discussion. And I feel like we've only just cracked the surface of this topic. So I hope there's a lot more for everyone to discuss after this panel is over. So thank you.